We are so excited to welcome Joanne Cassullo as our guest here at the Curated Cribs at the Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke, Virginia. I'm Cindy Peterson, the Executive Director. And a little bit about Joanne as we get started into the night. So Joanne, I'd love to tell a little bit about your background as we get started on our tour. Joanne Leonhardt Cassullo is the President and Director of the Dorothea L. Leonhardt Foundation, Inc., and serves on the board of the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke, Virginia, the Meadows School of the Arts at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, the Program Advisory Committee of the Nasher Sculpture Center in Dallas, Texas, and Roanoke College, from which she received a Bachelor of Liberal Arts degree in English, elementary school education, and fine arts in 1978. In 1983 to 84, Cassullo was awarded a Helena Rubinstein Fellowship in Museum Studies at the Whitney Museum, where she co-organized 2 exhibitions for their branch museums. She has also received the Aperture Foundation Award for Philanthropy in 2007, the Roanoke College Medal in 2008, and the Fort Worth County Day School Falcon Star Award in 2014 for her contributions to the field of contemporary and emerging art. She was a co-honoree for the 2018 Whitney Gala with artist Lorna Simpson and collector Beth Rudin dewoody. Additionally, Joanne has participated in panel discussions in New York City on the topics of contemporary art and contemporary art museums. And she has worked on art exhibitions, including most recently in 2010, For All the World to See, Visual Culture and the Struggle for Civil Rights at the International Center for Photography in New York City, where she was the visual research assistant to the curator of the exhibition, Maurice Berger. She is also a freelance writer on fine and decorative arts, and her articles have appeared in the Harvard Business Review, Countryside, Next, Flair, Art Space, and Miami Home, among other publications. And we welcome Joanne Leonhardt Cassullo, and we thank her for her work in our community here in Roanoke as part of the Board of Trustees of the Taubman Museum of Art and on our Collections Committee, as well as on the board of the Roanoke College. She's done so much for our community here, and we look forward to having her as part of our Curated Cribs. Joanne?
Thank you, Cindy, and welcome everybody to Dallas, Texas to see this installation of my collection. And a quick overview, as I was organizing for our tour tonight, I noticed several themes. First of all, you'll see works from the 30s and 40s, historical works. The majority of the works that you'll see on display are works by contemporary artists, most of whom are my close friends. And then there's some decorative art pieces by some of my very talented designer friends that I have here. One of the things that I noticed is that when I mentioned that a lot of the artists that are on display are my friends, my whole life seems to have, adult life, focused around the New York contemporary artwork. When I got to New York at the age of 27, I was a student at the Independent Study Program on a fellowship at the Whitney Museum. And met many of my friends there, including Beth Rudin dewoody, who joined the board of the Whitney with me 2 years later. I was the youngest trustee at the age of 29, and she has been my kind of my pal in the art world. And so many of the artists that I've met through Beth. There'll be connections you see between the Whitney Museum, Roanoke College, and the Taubman. That's the other thing that I noticed. But let's get started. Let's go to the first piece. We'll start at the entrance hall. This is work by Bob Daddio-Wade, who is a very good friend. Bob died just about 2 years ago, very sadly, but he is known for his big scale Texas art. He does large site-specific installations, and also he does these wonderful hand-tinted paintings that are based on black and white photographs that he has found. This one Bob made for me not long after my mother died in 1985, and it's called Cowgirl Dolly. And I always have it hanging in a place of honor because it means so much to me. Bob has a Roanoke College connection in that he also painted a portrait of Anne Weinstein, who was one of the big art collectors at Roanoke College and is the patron. She and her husband Sidney gave the Solar Wind, the sculpture that's on campus by Alice Aycock. So there's that connection there between Bob and Roanoke and of course the Whitney. Bob has a piece in the Whitney's collection. He was in a biennial and we miss him. You'll see some more work by Bob later on. So let's go in the media room.
You just have a beautiful apartment, Joanne.
Thank you. So this is an overview of what I call my media room. This is a wonderful place to hang out, especially when it's really bright out because my apartment, we've had to lower the shades, has so much sunlight coming in. So this is a very special room. And what we're looking at right now is a painting by Leidy Churchman. Leidy is the son of a Roanoke College trustee, Morgan Churchman, and that's how I met Leidy. This painting happens to be from a series of book covers that Leidy painted at the Museum of Modern Art. This one, of course, is a painting, a book rather, on Jacob Lawrence, and I just love it. It was from one of his early shows. So that's Leidy Churchman. Moving over here, we have one of my historical paintings. This is by an artist named Julius Waltz from 1938. And Julius Waltz was an artist that was from Texas, a regional artist. He was influenced by Thomas Hart Benton. You can see that in his style. The WPA commissioned him to paint murals in the regionalist style for post office, I think in Amarillo, Texas. This, I believe, is a painting of the Hoover Dam before they made it into the Hoover Dam. I was watching a documentary and you could see the Colorado River with the little man in the rowboat here, which was identical to what I saw on the TV set. So I think he commemorated the river just before the dam was built. So that's one of my historical pieces. Over here, against the books, if you can see it, is a work by Alexis Rockman. Alexis is a wonderful contemporary artist whose work deals with the effects of global warming and science gone awry and evolution. There's a Roanoke College connection because he had a show, an exhibition at Roanoke College, I think in 2003. So that's one more connection to Roanoke College. Over here, we have a rendering by Michael Graves, the architect, who designed an addition for the Whitney Museum back in the 80s up on Madison Avenue. We never built this. This is the Abroyer building. We were going to tear down the brownstones and then build behind it. And this project was never realized, but Michael and I were very close friends and he gave me this on my 40th birthday. So that's very special, I think. And then we'll move into the entryway where we'll look at these three pieces. This is an artwork by Billy Sullivan. I met Billy Sullivan through my friend James Solomon. James is one of those guys that introduces people to everyone else. He had his own gallery out in the Hamptons. He's an art consultant. And I don't know what we would do without James. He's going to come up later when we talk about the Kenny Scharf art car. But James introduced me to Billy. Billy is a beautiful photographer and painter, often uses his own subject matter of his family. And this, of course, he's got his two sons here and friend, and this is in the Hamptons. This particular photograph is by a wonderful artist named Liz Magic Laser. It's called Back to Nature, and it's from 2005. I met Liz through a friend when she was about to go through the same fellowship program that I went through at the Whitney. She was in the artist portion, and this particular series she was doing in graduate school, and I love it so much because most of the work in this particular series, she would use a backhoe and dig into the earth and have her friends pose inside of it. These are her grandparents, and she happened to be in Florida when they drove by the strip mall, and she saw this overturned tree, and she had her grandparents get inside it, which I just love. So this is the first Liz Magic Laser photograph that I have. This architectural model is by the architect Stephen Holl. It's called Bridge of Houses. It's from 1981. And I saw this in a Whitney show that my fellowship group curated. It was about unrealized schemes of Manhattan. And for those of you who don't know what the High Line is, it's this elevated rail in New York City that was abandoned. And in the late 70s and early 80s, it was a topic a subject of fascination to many artists and architects. And Stephen created 4 houses that would straddle the High Line. This one you can walk through. It's balsa wood that's clad in oxidized copper. He actually worked on it himself. And when I saw this in our exhibition, I knew I just needed to have it. It's the first piece of art that I bought as a quote unquote serious collector. And I asked Stephen if I could, pay over a period of time. And he since has told me that the $800 that I was sending for a year was enough to feed his group of workers. It was their petty cash. And so it's kind of interesting to think he is now so successful and so well known, and yet his work is so beautiful. He's also a fantastic watercolorist, and we'll see a couple of his watercolors later on. Over here is a photograph by Marilyn Minter. Marilyn is also a good friend of mine. This is a print that she did for Creative Time, which is a public arts organization I was on the board of for about 20 years. Marilyn was a former fashion model. She's known for her hyper-realistic paintings and photographs. She explores fashion, and she loves that juxtaposition between high fashion and the gritty aspect. And here you've got this beautiful model in these shoes walking through mud, which is pretty remarkable, I think. And back here is a wonderful photograph by a Texas photographer named Irby Pace. I met Irby through his gallerist down here. He is from Texas. He is very interested in animating the void between the subject he's photographing and himself. And by doing that, he'll throw pigment into the air and then photographing it, making the space between his subject and the camera come alive. I have several of his pieces, and there's a Roanoke College connection, in that Roanoke College also has 7 works of his in their collection. Excuse me. Welcome to my powder room.
This is a special treat, Joanne, when we go in here.
I'm sorry I'm bringing everyone into the bathroom, but what do you do? This is one of the Evie Day mummified Barbie dolls. And Evie Day is a very good friend. There's a crossover, of course, with the Taubman Museum, because now we have her exploding opera gowns hanging in the atrium. And Evie's also had an exhibition at Roanoke College. I met Evie in the bathroom in Miami Basel so many years ago. And her work has a lot to do with looking at feminism and beauty, and she's interested in many things. We'll see several of her pieces, but we have a great friendship, and I'm so happy that the Taubman audience gets to see her work as well. What I love about this bathroom is the wallpaper it's on. This is by another good friend, Mark Fox. Mark is a New York artist. His wife is a very well-known writer named Elizabeth Logan Harris, who's from Lynchburg. Mark has had a show at Roanoke College. It's in our permanent collection. I met Mark through the Whitney Museum when we bought one of his drawings. I introduced Mark to this wallpaper maker. And what Mark did was he sat down at his kitchen counter one day and he wrote out everything he could see into these patterns. And You can see my name, Joanne Spoon. I've given him a Mr. Peanut spoon. Mark is definitely allergic to peanuts and so has a fascination with Mr. Peanut. And I find Mr. Peanut things and send them to him. And he happened to just record that. On this side of the wall, can you see that? Is it too dark? Are two of his cutouts. Much of Mark's work is based on cut paper. Here we have almost a portrait of Mark dueling with Pinocchio, which I love. And then here is just a little cutout of an umbrella that Mark did for one of the Whitney art parties that Patrick McGregor helped plan. Patrick McGregor is helping the Taubman Museum with publicity for our fashion show that's coming up. That's opening in November. So again, all of these interconnections, and we'll revisit this umbrella a little bit later on the tour. So now we'll leave the bathroom. We'll go into the living room. Over here, on this wall where I was standing for is another one of the historic paintings that I have. It's by an artist named Eric Sloan, and it's from 1948, and it's called Clouds Against, I think it's called Clouds Against a Cold Front. And it is when I was researching a little bit about Eric to tell you all about, apparently he was a weatherman before he was an illustrator, a weatherman, and he also was a very gifted painter of landscapes of like the Northeast. You'd see like wheat fields and geese and classic barns. But what I loved was that these paintings that have airplanes in them, there's the story that Amelia Earhart was the first person that bought one of these cloudscapes that he did. That was one of his first patrons. Also here, we have two paintings. This one on the left is by an artist named Cynthia Wick. Cynthia is an artist that lives in the Berkshires. And if we were having a field trip for members of the Taubman, you'll be hearing about this. She'll be one of the studio visits that we have. She loves to explore color and infuses her paintings with emotion. This happens to come from a series called Into the Woods. She lives in Edith Wharton's physician's home. It's a Berkshire cottage, which is, maybe 10,000 square feet. And her view from her studio is this deep, dark woods that's in the back, which I just love. This little tiny painting is by an artist I met through Roanoke College trustees, Peggy Horn and her husband, Doug. She's an artist from Georgia, Atlanta, and she paints these exquisite portraits of single flowers. Sometimes she'll do a group of flowers. They're just beautiful. And I have them throughout my apartment everywhere. Over here, this photograph has a Roanoke College connection. This is by the photographer James Glass, and this particular photograph won the 2017 Roanoke Biennial that was held at Roanoke College. I'm sorry for the glare. Let me stand so you can see it. It's a picture of his son. They were happy. He lives near Blacksburg. They were driving down the road when they passed some roadkill, and they drove and they stopped. And his son got out and was mesmerized by it. And it's just the most exquisite photograph formally. And also it's everything about photography, capturing emotion. And it's just, to me, so beautiful. And I can't say enough wonderful things about James. He literally picked up a camera just years before this picture was taken. So he's new to the medium of photography, and he's quite accomplished. We'll move over here to this wall, which is my studio wall. I'll just point out some of the highlights. This changes constantly. I move things around, but this is just a grouping of things that I love. This dog is by Eric Fischel. It's called Brown Dog from 2010. Eric is a friend. He's an incredible painter. He's best known for his paintings that depict suburban life in Long Island from like the 70s, the 60s and 70s, although of course he continues to paint in that style, depicting his friends. And this is a piece by Todd Pavlisco. what I love about this, it's called Untitled Prior #2. This artist employs the strategy of mashing up two seemingly different things. In this case, the picture of Richard Pryor, and he is crying, necklaces that have little pieces of amethysts there. Here we have another Daddy-O Bob Wade piece. This is a fun story. Bob collects old-fashioned black and white photographs, you know, of Texans and cowboys and so on, that he'll use. He has a collection. He would use them to make larger paintings. And as I was going through them one day, I pulled this one out and I said, oh my God, that's my mother. This is my mother at a dude ranch. And I couldn't believe he had it. So anyway, he gave me this as a Christmas gift. He hand tinted it. This was, of course, the same outfit she was wearing in the piece of my entryway when we first walked in. This is an interesting piece. This is a gift from my friend Ann Pasternak, who's now the director of the Brooklyn Museum, but was the executive director of Creative Time, a public arts organization in New York. And I love it because, of course, it says women can't be artists, and it goes on to explain why they can't be artists. And they can't appreciate being artists because they have unbalanced temperament, makes her a woman impossible to be able to judge sanely and give an opinion of weight on anything that's truly artistic. It's done by Ruth Lindgren, who is a wonderful printmaker and has worked on artist books and printmaking. This is by the photographer William Wegman, who uses his dogs as Weimaraners as models. He's a conceptual artist, but his breakout moment was years ago when he started photographing all of his dogs as his subject matter. If you hear barking in the background, those are my Pomeranians. We're not allowed on this tour, so I'm sorry if you can hear them in the background. This little photograph is by Alex Soth. It's called Cammy's View, Salt Lake City. He's from Minnesota. I first saw his work in a Whitney biennial. His photographs are usually of people that are loners or strangers, and he has a way of capturing their personality. I love the fact that he captured this tiny little bird. This is just a piece I found on eBay. I have actually no idea who it is, but it reminded me a little bit of Alex Katz, although it's not Alex Katz subject matter. And it's my philosophy that you can mix high art with low. If something strikes your fancy, just buy it and mix it in. And you can have fun moving things around like that, which is why I have that right there. I think I probably spent $10 on this. This is one of my Tom Sachs pieces. Tom is one of the most well-known contemporary artists today. And this is a joke. He wrote this at an art party, but I actually do have a real Tom Sachs, and that's right behind us here. He is an artist that is best known for many projects that he does, large-scale projects. Once you see a Tom Sachs work of art, you'll never forget it. You can see his handwriting. This was created for the Creative Time project where he walked on Mars. And so I was an early supporter of the project. And so I have my own Mars program uniform, my identification card, my pencil, my spoon, and then of course my Mars shoes that I can wear, which are specifically for this project. And this was from 2008. And he is quite a character, to say the least. Also on this wall is a wonderful piece by the photographer Gregory Crewdson. And there is both a Roanoke College, a Whitney connection to Gregory Crewdson, and also a Taubman. He currently has a photograph in Vantage, or I think it was in, it may be down now, a show that just opened last month that came from the Whitney. Gregory is known for his large-scale photographs where he stages his characters. This one is of Julianne Moore. This is actually from a series called Dream House, where he used celebrities. Normally, he uses everyday people. I've been in a couple of his photographs. And generally, he focuses on 3 towns in Western Massachusetts: Beckett, Lee, and Pittsfield. This was commissioned by the New York Times, and therefore I think it was in Vermont, but it's the iconic Gregory Crewdson pose. So I just love it. And this is another Mark Fox, who have Mark's dueling peanuts. Again, he has a peanut allergy, and many times Mr. Peanut shows up in his work. This is a work of art by an artist named Lee Gordon. I don't know Lee Gordon, but it's one of the earlier purchases I made. It's called Self-Portrait in Mickey Mouse Mask and Bra. And he's sort of, the research I've done, he was included in a show where he used his face on other people's bodies, but I haven't been able to find out much more about Lee Gordon. So that's a big mystery. And this is a Liz Magic Laser. This is from one of her performance pieces from 2011 called I Feel Your Pain, in which she staged in a movie theater what looked like a romance, but all of the dialogue was from recent political speeches and debates. And so it received a lot of attention.
And Joanne, on this studio wall, I see a date on there. Tell us a little bit about the significance of that. And it's right in the middle. You recognize it, immediately.
Well, this is the date that the new Whitney opened downtown. You saw the rendering that Michael Graves did of the Whitney that we were going to expand up on Madison Avenue. We were never able to do that. We moved downtown to the end of the High Line and built a new building from the ground up with Renzo Piano. And this was the date. And I love this because it reminds me of Ankara's work, who is a Japanese conceptual artist who uses dates, etc. But that is probably the most significant date in my life, considering I waited, 30 years before we built the addition to the Whitney. We kept trying with architect after architect. So moving over here, we have the dining room area. We have an artist named Eric Doringer. This is from his Bootleg series. It's a takeoff on George Condo. He's a fun photographer, a painter, who literally does these tiny masterpieces on artists that you would recognize. Most of the artists don't get mad at him for doing it, but apparently one dealer in Chelsea was very annoyed that he was selling these works that range from $100 to, $1,000, and it forced him to leave. But most of the artists whose work he emulates enjoy that aspect of it. Here we have a work of art in the middle by an artist that's in the Roanoke College permanent collection. His name is William Binney. This is called Ice Shelf, and it's really, I'm going to read to you a little bit about what the artist himself says. If you can see this tiny pink flag here, it was the artist's notion that I asked him what the flag means, and he said that the flag serves two purposes. The pink flag is on one side, a distress signal. On the other, it's a wider narrative over the legacy of trying to claim space, which is more absurd because this is the ice shelf and there's a tiny piece of fabric on a rod. And the idea of the flag as a symbol of power, but actually not having any power of itself, is what I think interested him. Basically, it's a piece of textile attached on the top of a stick. And so he was sort of revealing the absurdity of claiming space, the sense of manifest destiny going to the ends of the earth. There was one other painting in this series, and it was the surface of Mars, in which there was a flag as well. So that's William Binney. And we have two of his paintings at Roanoke College. One is called The Vine That Ate the South, and the other is called Monument. He's a wonderful artist. He lives up in Williamstown, Massachusetts. He teaches at Williams College, as does his wife, Mari Rodriguez Binney, who is a wonderful art historian.
And Joanne, I see on your couch there's another connection.
Oh, yes. So sorry. Here we have the Hunt Sloanum. Everybody may remember Hunt Sloanum, who we did the Huntopia exhibition at the Taubman. These two pillows were actually in the exhibition, and this is his bunny rabbit fabric. Lots of his fabric were covering furniture. This was in the bedroom, and I begged him for these two pillows, which I just adore. Here we have a Gregory Crewdson photograph, and this is an early piece by Gregory. I think it's the second photograph I've bought of his, and I just met Gregory through a mutual friend, the writer A.M. Holmes. And when Gregory was making this body of work, which was probably around 1994 and 95, he was setting up dioramas. And in this case, you can see what looks like a terrarium with fireflies in it. And you can see a tin can, these little symbols of childhood with a ball of string as if you're playing telephone and a red flashlight. And this actually hangs in my bedroom, but I brought it out so that we could see it for this tour. And what I love about it is one night I was looking at this from my bed and I thought, my goodness, these fireflies look like a constellation of stars. So in a way, to me, and I don't know that this is what Gregory would say, but to me, this is a portrait of his childhood. He's been fascinated by fireflies. We just in the Berkshires at the Berkshire Botanical Garden and the Leonhardt Galleries had an exhibition of his firefly photographs, which were really wonderful. And he took them to Beckett, which is a place that I spent my childhood summers, as did Gregory. So that's my Crewdson. Coming over here, we have a wonderful Mark Fox. This is one of his cut stainless steel pieces. He's known for his cut paper, works on paper, but he's also known for his site-specific installations of cut metal, stainless steel. He was recently written up in the New York Times over this beautiful bridges that connect two parts of Mount Vernon, and they look like this, and it's like not the handrails, but it's the bridges, and it talks about the history of Mount Vernon, and everyone participated talking about what made the space so special. This is called GVW, and it stands for Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, who was the founder of the Whitney Museum. And when Gertrude, who was an artist herself, founded the museum in 1930, which was the beginning of the Depression, she said on the radio, "It is especially in times like these that we need to look to the spiritual. In art, we find it." And I just love that. And I love the fact that when you look at it, you can look through it and you can also see yourself. These two little pieces are by an artist named Tony Ross. I met Tony through James Solomon. She was included in the Beautiful Strangers exhibition at the Berkshire Botanical Garden in 2018 that James Solomon curated. And she's known for her works with ceramics and collage. And these two little pieces I just love because they remind me of an exclamation point, which we'll see in a second, by another artist. But first, I'm going to take you to my treasure cabinets. So I have many things. In a former life, I was a prop stylist. And so I collect everything I see and I move things around and I create little vignettes. And I have these two treasure cabinets where I have artwork and little tiny objects I found on the street, and it all mixes together. And I hope we can see this. I don't know, there's a lot of reflective surfaces, but you can see lots of jewels and china and little things. And look, right here, we have a Mindy Lamb pin. Here's a wonderful Taubman collection. Mindy Lamb was the artist that was featured at the luncheon that we had in the fashion luncheon. And she takes vintage pieces, she does her own wire work, and she combines them together. So I put several of her pieces in my cabinets, but that's a wonderful Mindy Lamb piece. I also have works by the artist Nancy Lorenz. Here's one piece, and I'll point others out. She uses inlaid mother of pearl. Nancy is an incredible contemporary artist, also a close friend, whom I met through Carl Willers, who is your chief curator at the Taubman. He took me to her show, and I'm going to point to the piece that I bought when I first met Nancy. They're beautifully made. She's very inspired by Asian arts and crafts, having spent many of her childhood years in Japan. So the mother of pearl and all the layers of lacquer. These pieces literally just glow when the sun hits them. So there's a Nancy Lorenz there. We have a Nancy Lorenz flower here. We have a pour box here. And we have a painting of Nancy's down here. She builds up her surfaces with gesso and then gold leafs them. They're just exquisite. Those are Nancy's pieces I just love. And in this cabinet, we have some more. The little flower paintings are by Esther Wilson from Georgia. And this is a Mindy Lamb painting, a piece rather. Mindy is made a pin responding to the painting. The painting is based on a photograph I took of my friends Matt Larkin and Lainey Grant's home in the Berkshires. We'll be seeing Matt Larkin, who is known for his topiary design. I'll be talking more about him in a second, but here's a Mindy Lamb pin. Here's another Mindy Lamb pin. You can see right over here, a painting by Esther Wilson. We have more Nancy Lorenz, more Nancy, just throughout the whole thing. If it shines or it glitters, I can't get enough of it, it seems.
Do you have another Evie Day as well?
Oh, yes, I do. Thank you for reminding me. This is one of Evie Day's tongues with pearls. She uses taxidermied tongues and clams in a whole series of her works. This happened to be an oyster we ate oysters at a 40th birthday party of a collector, Amy Phelan, at her birthday party. And Evie took the shells and then sent everybody who was at the table one of these pieces. And this is the tongue with a pearl on it. I just love it. Moving on to this wall, we have many things, but we have yet another Stephen Holl piece. He makes watercolors every morning, as well as being an incredibly acclaimed architect. One of the wonderful things about Steve's work is that he's the most incredible watercolorist. This is one of his abstract works that he made on June 2nd in 1992. This piece is by an artist named Michael Byron, who is a longtime friend of mine, who teaches at Washington University in St. Louis. But I met him, we have a Whitney connection. The Whitney has one of his works of art. This is a tornado painting. It's from his postcard series. And we shared a fascination of tornadoes. So he's a conceptual artist. He likes to collage images and words together. This is the contemporary artist, Amy Silman. And she's a wonderful abstract painter. This is figurative. It's a little unusual, but her sense of color is just divine. And I just love that piece. This happens to be a design for a car in 1960. And it was by an industrial designer named Richard Airbid, I think his name is. And I don't know much more about it, except that I just love the idea that this car was for the future. You can see the little dog here and the strange wheels underneath. And here we have another Roanoke College connection. The artist, Rob Wynn. Rob is an incredible artist. He's known for his poured glass pieces that deal with text. Here we have an explanation point. But his work is always beautiful and thoughtful, and a variety of mediums. He works on paper. He sews on paper. He paints. He's just exquisite. Roanoke College had an exhibition of his work recently, and I met Rob through Beth DeWoody. So there's that wonderful connection. And this is by Alice Ray Catherall. Alice is a friend of mine from Roanoke College. She's going to have an exhibition at Roanoke College. She went back to school to study painting and does the most incredible atmospheric landscapes of the sky and the ocean. This happened to be a portrait of a shoe I put on Facebook called 5 Inches of Pain, because my feet killed me after wearing it, but it had these incredible rhinestones. And as a surprise, Alice sent me this painting, which I just love. It just makes me laugh. And it just shows you, if you can get up close, just to see the way she moves the paint around the canvas. It's just so luscious and beautiful. Oh, she's just wonderful. She's also a poet. She is just one of the most incredible people. Here is a stripper shoe that was given to me by Evie Day that she put an orchid in. And I just love it. It's, you know, Evie has a wonderful sense of humor about exploring all types of sensuality and feminism and so on. And I put everything in the world under bell jars. My joke is, if you're here too long, be careful. I'll put you under a bell jar. But I just love to have all these objects around. And as we work our way around the room, I don't know if you can see this or if it's too, the glare is too much. Can you see?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, these are two wonderful boxes made for me by Ryan Humphrey, who's also a friend. We'll talk about his work in the guest room. But I had these made for my New York apartment. It was so small, I didn't have anywhere to put my suitcases. So the top one held my carry-on bag and the bottom one held the one that I always packed for to take on the plane with me. But now they serve as the perfect place for me to have a little tableau. And I just combined objects I found. You know, this is basically a candle snuff. That's a, you know, a wonderful religious icon. These are just, this is a Peter Clay ceramic necklace, and these are necklaces people have given me over the years. And this is just a little weird metal sculpture I found on eBay that I couldn't live without. And so now it's here. And then this is something that I love. This was a gift by Beth DeWoody. It's an ice cream cone, and it's by an artist whose name I'm completely for Greeley. His last name is Greeley. It'll come to me, I think, the minute we walk by, but I love having it hanging in the window because it's ice cream. And basically we can't see out the windows because the sun is too bright, but I have south and west exposures. And here in Texas, that means that the sun comes flooding in at all hours of the day until the sun goes down. And I just thought that would be so funny to have that there. This is the work by two artists, one named Edward Henderson, who is a friend, and the other is Stephen Galloway. And the idea was that the artist would, like Edward, would send this postcard to his friend, you know, Stephen, who would then make a companion piece. And they did this series back and forth, and their exhibition was it was installed when I saw it in New York at eye level. It was just one band of paintings. So it was like a story being told. It would start here and then continue on. And I just have 4 little pairings out of them, but they're so beautiful. They're gouaches on paper. This is Edward Henderson and this is Callaway. After a while, you can tell the difference between their styles. But at first it was a little bit hard for me to figure out. Then moving on over here, I have a piece up here by Michael Byron, who is an artist. We looked at his work a little bit before. He made me this piece and gave it to me not long after he returned from Amsterdam and then moved to St. Louis, where he felt totally fucking lost, as he put it in his own words. And I love the painting, but it wasn't until maybe 20 years later when I moved to Dallas that I really understood it. And so now it sits in a place of honor. This little bird painting is by Mark Dennis, also a good friend. Mark just had an exhibition at the Berkshire Botanical Garden, and he has got, he's had many of the collectors you know about. Beth DeWoody collects his work. He's does beautiful hyper realistic works of art, sometimes with a great sense of humor. This one is called Bird Dreaming of a Cloud. It happens to be a blue jay. And when I was reading up on blue jays, one of the sounds that they mimic is the sounds of the red-tailed hawk, which is, of course, the mascot of Roanoke College. Rooney is a red-tailed hawk. Speaking of Roanoke College, here are 2 pieces out of the wonderful exhibition that Talia Logan organized and Lacey Leonard, her assistant, for the Paper Blooms exhibit that was several years in the making, which took over all of Olin Gallery. And my favorite pieces were the little dandelions. Can you see this little snail? Talia had her son, Judah, and his Boy Scout troop make these little snails. And I just love these 2. They were on my dining room table and now sit on top of this wonderful drinks cabinet. This drinks cabinet is by my friend Matt Larkin, who also has a Roanoke College connection. Matt Larkin, among other things, is a wonderful interior designer, but he also has a landscape architect business. And one of the things that he does is he welds his own topiary forms and he creates incredible magical topiaries. Our topiary at Roanoke College of Rooney that stands 14 feet tall is by Matt Larkin. And I asked him to make me a drinks cabinet in memory of my dad. I found these handles on eBay. And so he crafted this incredible cabinet. The doors slide back. It holds everything you need to make a cocktail of your choice. This pulls out, you can mix them. But what I really love is this beautiful hand forged base with these oversized fishing hooks. My father's pastime was deep sea fishing, and he passed away, was lost at sea in 1961 fishing for black marlin off the coast of Peru. So we call this the memorial cabinet to my father, and it's a very special piece. Over here in the living room is another wonderful painting by Michael Byron. It was from 1991. It's called When Circumstances Conspire. It was in the 1993 Corcoran Biennial. And what I love about this painting, first of all, it's enormously heavy. We had to support it by building an extra support system behind this. But if you can see the surface, his surfaces are so fantastic. He pushes the medium of oil, he'll put water on it. He, combines images out of textbooks, and you get this incredible atmospheric painting that you can assign whatever you'd like to, whatever meaning you would want. And it's quite something, I think. In the guest room, we have two beautiful prints by Alice Aycock. Now, here's another Roanoke College connection. Alice Aycock is such a well-established sculptor. She has been well-known. I met her, of course, through James Solomon, who is a good friend. These are two of her beautiful prints. This one is the series she did called Paper Chase that went up and down Park Avenue in the medium. This is a white aluminum. A lot of the works look like vortexes or twisters. It was fascinating in 2014. So I have two of her prints. She makes beautiful drawings and watercolors. We have a series of them at Roanoke College in our permanent collection. Part of her brain is like her father's, he was an engineer, and you can see it in the solar wind, the big turbine engines, that he would make. But as also when he would travel, he would bring books home to her, and her imagination was sparked by fairy tales and myths. And you see all of this in her body of work, which I think is so wonderful. This is I'm sorry.
I was just saying, Joanne, we've been showing a number of images of Alice's larger works.
Right, that's the solar. Wow. Yeah, and that we recently restored that. It was wonderful. It wasn't in great condition, and the board voted to restore it rather than to remove it, which is, of course, the right thing to do with a beautiful piece of sculpture. This piece of sculpture was site specific, and it was purchased by Anne and Sidney Weinstein, who, as I mentioned, Bob Wade did that portrait of Anne on a horse, the white horse that sits in our commons at Roanoke College. So all of these things it's like one big happy family after a while in my life. Let's move in here. This is the guest room, which I call the guest dewoody suite, because Beth Dewoody, the collector, and her children stay here. Beth, I think the audience will remember, we've seen several of her works of art from her collection. Most recently, A Very Anxious Feeling was organized by curators from her collection of Latin artists. This is a portrait of Beth by the artist Matthew Watson, and it was in a show which didn't focus on, it's a portrait, but instead of focusing on Beth, the portrait is basically her initials, and then AH for Adam Helm, JC for John Chamberlain, and then Alex DeCorta, so that you get all of them are equally important. And this sits here and anchors this guest room because when her children are in town or Beth are in town, they come and stay here. This photograph, Carrie, help me say this name, is by a photographer who's Greek, and her name is, hold on, her name is Polizini Papa Petru, and it's called Sisters. It was given to me by a friend, and I don't actually know her, but what I love about it is the subject matter. Often this photographer will explore issues of identity and childhood and through her and performance through her work. And I don't know how everyone if they have good relationships with their siblings, but I would say that summarizes my relationship with my sister Tootie. On this other wall over here, we have a photograph by the photographer Chris Vereen. Chris is known for two types of bodies of work. The first is the photographs that he takes of his family and friends in Illinois. And the second group of work is called the Self-Esteem Studio Salon. And this is Kyle DeWoody, Beth's daughter, and Carlton DeWoody in like the 2003 biennial, where Chris has a performance. He has an alter ego named Cherry Nevers, which is basically his name, but the letters moved around. And you go and you go through the salon and you dress up and you talk, and he makes you feel good about yourself. And at the end of it, they take a portrait. And I absolutely love this portrait of both Kyle and Carlton. And then this watercolor is by Stephen Holl, and it's actually his self-portrait, which I love. And I thought it would be so great to have in here. In here also is a photograph by William Wegman. This is one of his dogs on the truck's running board, which I love. And then this beautiful fashion photographer, Francesco Scavullo, who we will all remember from Cosmopolitan. He always had the covers of Cosmopolitan, but this is a photograph of Martha Graham. I'm sorry that there's so many reflective surfaces here to see, but I also want you to see, can we go in another bathroom tour? Just really quickly, I wanted you to see this wallpaper by Mark Fox. And this is as if Mark Fox, when he works with paper, he doodles when he's on the telephone or he takes a phone call, and he never throws anything away. So what he does is he'll cut out with an X-Acto knife all of the shapes, all of the words or text, and then so that it looks like this. And then he'll recombine them with archival tape, and he'll flip it over, and there'll be a cartoon of a cloud of all of these things that have been placed together. And we'll see an example of that in a minute. This is by Ryan Humphrey. And Ryan, this is from a gift from Patrick McGregor, who I mentioned earlier. Patrick is helping us with publicity for the fashion show that we have at the Taubman coming up. And he worked, the artist, Ryan Humphrey, worked at the Warhol Foundation. So you see in his work, the Andy Warhol sort of sensibility of pop art. If you see something that says Humphrey Industries, it's usually by Ryan Humphrey, who went through the independent study program at the Whitney, like Liz Magic Laser and like myself. And so there's always that interconnection, and he's a really talented guy and a great friend. Here is the Mark Fox kind of cartoon cloud. If you were to take, referencing the wallpaper, if you were to take those white shapes and flip them over, here is what you might see. And in this one, you can see the word Whitney, and you can see, I think my name, Vanderbilt is in here. And this is called Amor Fati. And I don't know, I just love it. It's, Mark, if he had his way, would just have this pinned to the wall, but I have it under glass so that we don't have so much dust. This is an artist named Fred Tomaselli. Fred does lots of collage work. He basically will take, his assistants will spend hours cutting out flowers and dividing or whatever out of catalogs, and he divides everything by color and then collages with it. Many times his work will be
underneath lots of resin. This happens to be a collage that the Creative Time editioned, and it's so quaint. This is, you know, Barney Ebbers. This is from 2005 when we thought, you know, the WorldCom debacle was the most terrible thing. Little did we know, you know, Bernie Madoff was coming, and then we had, you know, more recent years, things that have happened politically. But I just love that piece. Here we have some more Ryan Humphrey works. These are what I call his pop art pistols. They almost look like they came out of a Warhol painting, you know, of Elvis as a cowboy. And I just love the rhinestone in them, and I've collected them. I have them in every color, and you can put them on a bookshelf. They make great gifts, especially here in Texas. In New York, wonderful because you don't need a permit to own one. And they're just a lot of fun. I give them as gifts and people just love them. So that's that. Now we're going to walk to the kitchen. I mentioned to you that was a prop stylist. The very first thing that I unpacked when I moved into this apartment was this table, and I set it up like this. I mean, everything else was in boxes. I didn't have towels or sheets, but my collection of napkin rings was in place, and all of these little found bits and pieces. I mix it all up. I find things. Oh, this is a work of art by a Roanoke artist named Susan Jameson that Beth dewoody gave to me. So there's a connection. And, you know, this is the old Whitney building. This is the new Whitney building. This is a Michael Graves miniature teapot. I mean, teapot. If, you know, whatever I find, I end up putting there. But I wanted to draw your attention to my Hunt Slono. There's one of his bunny paintings. And that's usually hanging up in my bedroom, but I moved it here so you could see it. It's was not in a place that we could see, mostly because we're not going in my bedroom. That's where my two dogs are right now. But so we've already talked about Hunt, but here is William Shatner. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we go to William Shatner, the videographer wants to show you all the little things I collect, like beach glass and Barbie hands and crystals and rats and, you know, ants. And then we have William Shatner. And this was given to me by the artist Sam Van Aken. Sam Van Aken is the artist who made the Tree of 40 Fruit that's on the Roanoke College campus. And when we got to know each other, we were talking about our first true loves, and mine was William Shatner. And so he parted with this autographed photograph he had of William Shatner, and it sits here. It's been here for years. It's particularly topical considering he finally went into space. So I have breakfast with Captain Kirk every morning. And then I want to take you over to my refrigerator to show you a couple of more things. This is a Mark Fox puppet. One of the other bodies of work that Mark Fox does is puppetry. He made a puppet performance for my 60th birthday, and now he's made Wendell. And Wendell is his newest puppet who I've not met, but I'm a little bit nervous about and scared of, because I've seen Wendell smoking candy cigarettes. Wendell has his own calendar. Here he is in the parade. I just don't know who he is. And I texted Mark last night and I said, I'm going to give this tour of my collection and Wendell is in it, but I need to know, I mean, has he been to prison? I don't want to expose our audience. And he says he's not been to prison unless you call Catholic boys school prison. So that's Wendell. And I have yet to meet Wendell, but I'm sure I'll be meeting Wendell soon. And then one last thing before I get to the ultimate finale. This is some more of my historical art. These are some of the first watercolors I bought by an artist named Rolf Scarlett when I worked at Washburn Gallery in New York. They are from 1940. He was known for his geometric abstraction. Mostly his work is shown at the Guggenheim. He also was a textile designer. And I just love those works of art. They're from the 40s. And then my very last thing to show everybody, and my favorite thing, is Norma, the art car. Norma is a 1992 Cadillac that I contacted James Solomon, who reached out to Kenny Scharf's studio in Los Angeles and arranged to have her painted. She's been car bombed. So she's Norma the art car. We never would have been able to do it without James. Normally there's a list of 40 or 50 people and Kenny has to like approve you, etc. James made one phone call and we got to the top of the list. And this particular postcard was given to me by Talia Logan and her assistant, Lacey Leonard, on top of one of the art, the pictures from the art kits that they deliver. The idea is that they'll be driving Norma around the community, delivering art kits to students and people. And you'll be seeing her hopefully maybe in parades. So that's the latest thing. I have yet to see Norma in person. I get to see her next week when I'm on campus for my board meeting. And that's my collection as it's installed right now. So I'm going to grab my drink, and if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them for you.
Thank you, Joanne, for opening your doors and showing us your collection throughout your home, and how delightful. And ending it with Norma. Thank you to Talia Logan, is on the call as well, a collaborator of the Taubman Museum, as she leads the Olin Galleries at Roanoke College. So we have